G'day, this is Captainoob, and this is an RPD Machine Gun. Players of Fallout 3 will probably find this strikingly similar to the Chinese assault rifle from that game, namely because of this hand grip here. That's kind of where the similarities end. It's got the whole AK sort of blocky design that the Chinese assault rifle had, but as you can tell on the side here, it's got this giant belt feeder instead of the standard looking AK-47 mags that you'd find back in the Chinese assault rifle in 3, and obviously to accompany that there's a reload animation. Top cover comes up, you replace this, top cover comes down, maybe a charging handle thing here and there. Worth mentioning that tactical reload is an availability with this weapon, which we'll be utilizing because I've got a mod that actually makes that work, so that's great. I can finally use it. Speaking of the RPD in itself, it's a weapon that was actually a thing in real life, first developed and produced around 1944 by the Soviet Union, but didn't see mass production until around the 1950s, so I'm very doubtful to whether this thing actually saw any action during the Second World War, so that's a shame because that's the biggest of the wars that we've had, and this thing wasn't a part of it, so I'm sure it's very upset that it couldn't shoot some Nazis in the face or something. And it was a predecessor or a successor to a machine gun called the DP machine gun, which the DP obviously stands for dinner plate because look at the thing. It's not a very pretty looking weapon, and I don't think that looks super reliable, so that's what it was replacing, but we're not quite at AK yet, you can tell on this weapon, so a few years later they'd replaced this thing with an RPK, which is basically an AK-47, beefed up the internals for sustained fire and elongated the barrel for accuracy over range, and they found that to be a better system than this. Probably slightly easier for logistics too, because it just uses all of the same parts as AK-47 perhaps, which would be great for production, but it's an interesting weapon. We'll get into the attachments now, I suppose, and you'll find that these will have the same sort of attachments as the handmade rifles, although with a calibrated powerful auto receiver here, because you can't make this thing in semi-auto unfortunately, but it's a light support weapon or a saw type weapon, or at least a precursor to that sort of weapon roll, so I suppose that's fine, and having that extra crit damage along with that might be useful for if I want to spam this thing a little bit in VATS. We've got a standard barrel right now. You'll find that the best barrels and best attachments go under DS arms, which is basically modernizing the thing, so that'll give us an incredible increase in range and also accuracy, which is awesome. You can also have a shorter barrel. Should you want to use this thing a little bit more in VATS, you'll get a little bit more shots at the cost of range and accuracy, of course. Now for the grip, you can change this on the bottom here, and it'll actually just, I don't know, screw a Picatinny rail there so you can throw your grips and everything on the bottom of that handguard, and there's a few of them to go around. I think you'll find with the higher level requirements or higher perk requirement, foregrips will be slightly better for your recoil control, and the recoil on this thing is actually kind of gnarly. We'll get to that in a second, but it is firing these 7.62 rounds, which are from the Nuka World DLC, and whilst I'm on the topic of Nuka World, this is a hard requirement of this weapon. If you don't have the Nuka World DLC, this will simply not work, and as such, using the 7.62 rounds, it'll actually have the same firing sounds as a handmade rifle, which is fine because, you know, if that's what AK sound like in this universe, then sure. Which does mean if you've got a kick-ass sound replacer for the 7.62 firing handmade rifles, it'll apply to this one too, and this thing will sound kick-ass as well. Just a little bit of a word of advice, if you're ever going to have a mod that has replaced standard sounds, you'll have the replacers that'll affect them too. So you can actually chamber this thing in 5.56 if you want to. This will end up making you do less damage, but somehow have a higher fire rate in some cases, even though the internals and the blowback system wouldn't be working as fast. Don't worry about that. We're going to definitely have this chambered in 7.62 though for the damage, and including this one, that's 150 rounds of 7.62. Yes, because the 5.56s are smaller, you can have slightly larger rounds for even longer sustained fire, but honestly 150 rounds, the difference is what, a quarter, and we're getting that much more damage out of it. A little bit. So I think that's worth having the 7.62s in there, plus I just console commanded myself 10,000 of them, so why not, eh? And you can have some sights on this. It'll just, like, I don't know, bolt a Picatinny rail on the top cover there. There's a couple of cool scopes, including that one, which is an American scope. This Bravo 4 scope I've found is pretty cool. It doesn't look like it totally belongs on something like this, But I want to chuck that on. This will be like a long-range sniper, or not a sniper, but a long-range support gunner type weapon. But yes, there's also reflex sights for you to utilize should you want to use this thing, and VATS will make it a little bit more efficient with your AP. And of course, there's some scopes there if you really want them. Also, some night vision scopes if you feel like it as well, which I kind of don't see the point to. But in terms of recoil control, these ones will actually give you some muzzle brakes and compensators, and doesn't look like they cost you range. So if you don't want to have this thing suppressed, by all means put the muzzle brakes and compensators on, because you will need to control this recoil. But we're going to go for a suppressor that activates Ace Operator already up to 181 damage. Very good, very good. We've got a standard handguard. We can make that a DS arms, which will modernize it, make it polymer, and will decrease the weight a little bit and improve this thing's weight. And you can have a flashlight that is not on a Picatinny rail along the barrel. It's just sort of stamped onto there with some sort of thing. And a laser sight or a laser sight light combo can be applied, as we are so rudely pushed into this menu from somewhere. And right now I've got a bipod. We can remove it, you can fold it, or you can have it deployed, which will increase your recoil control. I guess because it's like a counterweight on the front. We're going to deploy it because that doesn't look tacky at all, does it? You can't actually use it for much, but that's something. Right now we've got a standard stock. You can have a shorter one, which kind of looks like a PKM stock, to be honest. Almost a shark, like a shark fin? No, that's not a PKM. That's more of a... Where have I seen that one before? I'll have to come back to that. M240 Bravo? I don't know. No, the PKM stock is more of a skeletal looking thing. DS arms, that's for recoil control, the best recoil control. Funnily enough, the thing, like the stock is sort of angled down a little bit. I don't know whether that's for ergonomics or that's just because the weapon is just like that. Just funny like that, I guess. And we've got a standard trigger right now, but we can change that to a DS arms trigger. That'll increase our fire rate. I don't know how exactly a trigger might do that. Maybe it's like a bump stock trigger or something. And that's it for that. You can have a DS arms pistol grip or a Tyrant pistol grip. Makes it look all kind of skeletal. And yes, they've got all these fluffy nonsense descriptions that I'm sort of skimming over here, but slightly slower ADS time and stability. Like, who cares about that, right? You're gonna aim down sights at you're not gonna charge someone around the corner with this. It's not going to be firing that fast, so maybe you can allow yourself the time to aim down sights. I think we'll have to plan around that, I suppose. Right now, I've got no legendaries. We don't intend to put one on, but that's there if you need it, and that is one of our RPDs. You've also got a chainsaw variant with a section of mods just for itself, and it's different little bits of animation, which basically has got the same thing. So I'll quickly skim through this. You can have a DS arms barrel for increased range. You'll also get this whole sort of, I don't know what that is. Maybe that's to make it look a little bit more like the chainsaw, but it's got this stamped air-cooled look about it, which I think is pretty awesome. And you can have no grips. You can apply the magazines just like you would, the same as you'd find in the standard RPD. And no sights can be applied, but you can apply some muzzles on it. We're going to make this a big old Viper muzzle brake, which will increase our range, which is great. Also requires gun nut rank 3, so you know this one means business. And you can have a laser sight on the side, which is pointing down and not in line with the barrel. So whether that's actually going to be useful, I'm not really sure. Let's see how to get them. In order to pick up the RPDs in-game, they're injected onto the level list, so you'll find them in shops. Right now, I'm in Clears at Good Neighbor, and I've found both the normal and the chainsaw version of the RPDs in suppressed automatic form. Interesting. I feel like the suppressor here is interesting to put on a chainsaw. Righto, so here we are outside of the Immersive Gunners Plaza once again, and here is the RPD in all of its glory in first person. Taking a quick look down the sights there, that is indeed a see-through scope. And there's a recoil, by the way. It's very strong recoil indeed. And in third person, I feel like it's even worse. So if we want to use third person to deal with all of this visual recoil, well, that's not going to be happening. And also with see-through scopes, aim down sights in third person, it's just a standard aim iron sight zoom in there with a little bit of a dot for reference of where you're aiming. And a quick look at this thing in third person, it's pretty cool, good size, doesn't clip anywhere, which is great. Also, you'll note that the grip on this thing appears to be held in the correct way in first and third person alike. Now, I don't remember where I saw another canted grip on a machine gun like this, but I think I've seen it done before, but it's impressive either way. This is the chainsaw variant, which in first person, you'll hold it sort of down on your hip here, and you'll actually have the laser sight for a point of reference on where you're aiming, which if you don't have a laser sight, then you're aiming with a little bit of blue tack in the middle of your screen, but that's kind of cool. Also cheating, but that's okay. You're only fighting AI in Fallout 4. No one's going to report you. But yeah, it's a little bit off in third person. You hold it just a little bit too high, but that's probably just to make it look better. Although there was minigun animations, you'll hold it down on your hip properly, although that's probably because you couldn't hold it in front of yourself like a rifle anyway, but it's kind of interesting how they managed to do those third-person animations, I think. And there's the third one. It's a little one. It's got a short barrel, a shorter stock, a reflex sight, a Russian one, and also the 5.56 rounds loaded into it. So hopefully it's a little bit lighter, might be slightly better to be utilized in VATS that way, although we're going to be costing ourselves a lot of damage and range doing that. So here's the situation, and there's my quick save in case of crash, which we might, because we're going to be blazing through these guys today. The game crashed, and I definitely didn't die trying to fight these gunners with a weapon that is not as powerful as I have been using over the past couple of weapon videos. So yeah, we're not expecting groundbreaking damage here. Also, there's a blurriness around this reticule here. There's like a little cube around it. That's interesting. But we'll try to go for some cheeky headshots here. Try to get a little bit of extra sneak critical damage before we begin. And it's hard to fight them over at this distance because the recoil is pushing the muzzle right to the bloody moon, and we're doing okay so far, I suppose. We'll keep utilizing this lean function here. Maybe that's blocking line of sight a little bit. But I'm thinking that these bright clothes that I'm wearing might be giving my position away a little bit. I guess we have to go cinemass with these guys because, it's just everywhere. So here's how this is going down. I'm fighting a war on two fronts here. Not only am I fighting a platoon of bloodthirsty gunner mercs, I'm wrestling with the weapon to try to keep this thing on target. That's a recipe for my health being depleted and also dying and trying again, as I've experienced already. So we're trying to keep this going. Got a couple of good things going for us. We get occasional staggers. We've got a big magazine. We've got a laser sight on this, so we might just give this the old Rambo treatment and just everything a little bit like this, I suppose. That's nerd rage now. So we've got 84 rounds. We'll try to get as much damage as we can, because we will get, oh my god, even in like aiming down, not even aiming down sights, this thing's fucking dancing up in my grill. Not cool, man. Anyways, we managed to recover a little bit of health from that nerd rage stint, but we're going to be losing damage now, thanks to the fact that, we'll just shuffle back into cover a little bit now. There we go. We're trying to hit that guy, and we peek this side now. Never mind, we're being flanked from multiple angles. Just hunker down in full cover, please. Throw a magazine in, and we don't actually get nerd rage here. We don't get it. We get a cheeky level up there on a YOLO charge, which I definitely did not consider happening there, but we're hanging on by a thread there. We hunkered down, we've got that cheap little level up, and we can continue. So, even the chainsaw, that's wrestling a little bit. It's definitely a weapon that is probably punching above its weight right now. I actually probably wouldn't consider this to be an endgame weapon. I would almost certainly use a handmade over this, simply because the handmade would be so much easier to use, and the amount of 7.62s I'm putting down range now, like these bullets aren't cheap, you know. They don't grow on trees. Actually, they grow on nuka trees, but the trees that they grow on will only allow you a certain amount a day, and we're getting through these quite fast now. Let's switch over to this one. We'll try to get more VATS action happening. Okay, so this one's slightly okay in VATS. It's not too bad. The 5.56 caliber definitely hurting us a little bit. Hurting that gunner more, by the way. There she goes. I think she had an RPD as well. I'm very thankful that we haven't come across a MG42 wielding gunner, because we'd be in a little bit of trouble. But even when I'm using this thing, hip firing, moving side to side, look at it go. It's swaying everywhere, just dancing all over my screen. Just simmer down. Just get out of the way, please. I don't have to wrestle with a bloody handmade rifle saying "down, boy" every time I start firing. That's silly. But we'll persevere either way. We'll get the chainsaw back out once more, and maybe that whole brief run around Gunner's Plaza wasn't that worth it, I suppose. That person's got a pistol. We'll try to stagger him in place. That sort of worked out. It appears we are back into Nerd Rage, so we'll close the distance a little bit. Maybe reload first. Give me a minute. Activate Nerd Rage manually, because why not? And just get a bunch of headshots with extra damage in slow motion. Perfect. Okay, so we're getting through here slowly, but now I'm at medium range. I'm just going to use a scope. I'm just going to use VATS. Maybe a reload first. If I'm lucky, I'll get it. There we go. Let's give you a little bit of this strength. Okay, that's strong. That's really strong, actually. And instead of taking the fire escape like I'd usually do, we're going to go up this way. And feel the wrath. See-through scope, probably overkill from that range, so we'll just switch over to third person, aim down sights that way, which leaves us one last room. If there's an MG42 in here, then the whole run is over. But we can hope that one hasn't spawned here. We actually managed to get a few sneak criticals there. That one's got a standard vanilla game assault rifle, and you didn't even get your stealth boy going before you were slain. Little babby gunner, he's jumping. Get out of here. He survived a shot from this thing. Well, if that doesn't tell you this is endgame weaponry, then I don't know what will, because, wow, I wasn't expecting that. Anyways, we got through it. Killing with a smile, I guess. Yep, she's smiling. We're in good mood despite what's happening. Also, classic holstered weapons, it works. Even the chainsaw variant will be mounted to your back like that. Very, very nice. Alright, we'll try to take out the big swan monster right now, but it might be a little bit difficult. Well, actually, that ended up going pretty well there, but first of all, got to pick off these little boom bugs that are always pissing off Swan down there, and we can't target them specifically now. Can we get them now? He's stomping on them. Alright, I think that's them taken out, and now we can successfully get sneak criticals. And a weapon like this, and a target as big as Swan over there, try to get some headshots in just to take him out some more. That's where you'll find the power in this weapon. If you can get a lot of sneak attack crits going, then that's great. Also, I managed to only load 142 rounds into that. Was that tactical reload? Was it? That's... Try to shoot the rock out of the air. I don't know if you can do that. I feel like that'd be cool if you could. Maybe I did just then. Okay, you definitely can't, but those ones that I attempted to shoot landed right at my feet there and didn't hit me at all. He's really off his throwing game today. Alright. Show's over, Swan. Let's get this over and done with. And before we do anything else, let's oh, you can get a bunch of VAT shots with the chainsaw, which is interesting. Whether that's intentional, I'm not sure, but we'll just completely wreck his face, I suppose. We'll utilize the calibrated receivers here. We'll pop 5 crits in a row. It'll be a slow motion cinematic kill where we're clipping inside his gargantuan body. And never mind, that's actually Nerd Rage. We'll utilize this to get the clutch kill again. And would you just settle down, RPD? Alright, so we've done it. We've succeeded here with great loss of health. Don't worry, we build them tough over here at Captainoob. They'll recover from this, but I think we struggled a little bit there, more than we did with other weapons, and that might be because I've been using very overpowered weapons of late that, you know, a lot of the weapons that I do use seem to take out Immersive Gunner's Plaza, and the monsters slightly easier than that. So whether you could chalk that up to balanced or just a little bit underpowered, I suppose that is subjective, but I'll find that this is probably somewhere between maybe handmade and sort of Scar H effectiveness and those sorts of mods, you know. I probably would take a handmade over this simply because the handmaids don't try to fight you; they help you fight your enemy, and which is not to say this is not a high quality weapon mod. It is. It's a wonderful job they've done here, but I just think the recoil and the animations are a little bit too much. Even if the recoil itself was sort of just toned down a little bit, just so you could control it a little bit more, I could. Or rather, they would adjust the recoil to be a little bit more predictable, so I can, you know, pull down on the mouse a little bit like that and not really have that much of a problem with aiming. If it was in a specific pattern, perhaps, like you would in those shooters like COD or Battlefield, maybe it'd be a little bit more predictable and slightly less janky to use, but we got through it. If you are interested in seeing this weapon in your game, check out the link in the description. It shall be there. If I find an Xbox port, you probably would have already known about it, but I'll try to look for one of those as well. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Let's go home and eat pizza.